Is such a big topic to take on without having written an outline or thought about it more. But it's just really been on my mind this morning because I've been watching. I got caught up in watching the conscious Lee. I think that's his handle. I don't know what it is on YouTube, but anyway, if you haven't ever watched the conscious Lee on TikTok and Instagram, you should. He is a black male activist slash orator slash content creator. But anyway, so what got me thinking about this today was he shared this video of wait, it was the first. He shared like 3 different clips, but um he shared the video. What was the first one? Gosh, I'm forgetting. I feel like I'm mixing up all the different videos I saw. Okay, well, I'll come back to that. I'll just tell you what my thoughts were. Actually, I'll talk about the second part because I can't think of what the first one was, but the second part was a video that he kept getting tagged in where an Asian woman said, "Can we talk about how white women and black men sometimes function in the same way as oppressed and oppressor?" Oh, okay. Now I know what the first video was. Now I know what the first video was. The first video was this black dude on a podcast. I forgot what the podcast name was, but a black dude had a white woman on a podcast for men. The name of the podcast said something like "for men." This podcast is for men. And he had a white woman on there. I'm not even sure who she is. I don't even know who he is. Okay. Random black dude, random white woman. And he said, "What makes you think?" I'm like, why is he talking to her like this? Because she's a guest on his podcast. But he said, "What makes you think that you are qualified to talk about masculinity and talk about men in this format or something?" And I was just like, dang, like, bro. But anyway, she gave a great answer. She said, um, I, she said, it's the same. Actually, let me just say this. As soon as I'm done with this, as soon as I'm done with this, get ready with me live stream, I'm going to put this clip that I'm referencing, I'll put it up on my shorts in some way. So if you want to see, oh no, I'll put the link. Here's what I'll put the link in my community tab to this very specific TikTok that I'm talking about, so you can see what the heezy I'm talking about. If I thought about it, I would have put it up first. But anyway, so this black dude says to this white chick, "What do you think gives you," I think he said, "the qualifications to sit here and talk about masculinity?" And she said, it's the same qualifications that gives you the right to talk about whiteness um because you've lived it, because you've survived it." And she made a really good point. I don't know why these tweeters are there. She made a really good point that the oppressed is always going to know more about the oppressor, not out of leisure, not out of desire, but because that's what you have to do for survival. I'm not talking about black and white, men and women. I'm talking about any situation on planet Earth. When there's an oppressed person or people group and an oppressor, the oppressed will always know more and have to know more about the oppressor in order to survive. So this isn't a black white thing. This isn't a black Asian thing. This isn't a white Arab thing. This isn't just a male women thing. This isn't even this could be applied to domestic violence also. In a domestic violence scenario, which I've been in, I always knew more about how my abuser operated, how he thought, what he did, where he went. I always knew more than about him than he knew about me, because of the power dynamic. I had to if I wanted to survive. Anyway, so she said that to him, and he looked quiet because he had nothing to say. Because what you gonna say? He knew it was true at that moment. Like, it's true. Black people in America, I'll say, always know more about white people, because we have to survive. But it's interesting, and it feels so validating for me. Y'all, it feels so validating for me, because as a kid, when I was so my mom, okay, so just the quick backstory is my mom is white. I was raised, with white people in a white household, but she sent me, so I lived in black neighborhoods, identified as black, had black father and black family that I didn't see very often. But when I went to school, because I was with my friends at home much more often, my racial and cultural identity was set like really, really early on as a black kid, even though I was being raised by a white mother. Anyway, so she sent me to a white private school, white private Christian school. But when I was a kid, like, I knew at a very young age I don't know, like maybe like fourth grade, fifth grade, which I feel like is pretty young. But I knew at a really young age that I knew more than those white people about race and racism. It's really interesting. Like I just kind of knew, like I know more than you. I'm smarter than you. But I also felt like I also felt the frustration and exasperation of that because I was made to feel like I was the one who was not as good as them. Because I came from, I was shipped to these schools from Detroit, from from the poor area, because I was um not as smart as them. I didn't get as good as great as them, but like my emotional intelligence about race and racial issues was pretty high. And these kids weren't thinking about race and racial issues, and they definitely weren't being taught about it. So I knew, um, hold on, gotta shave my mustache. So I knew that I knew more than these white kids. And there was no way I could have articulated that at the time. It was just something that I knew, but I didn't really get like confirmation of that until I was like much older. I don't know, maybe even after 9/11 is when I remember like first having more access to more black preachers and speakers and, authors and stuff where I was like, oh yeah, like other people are saying the same thing that they understood from a young age, that they were very, very well aware of race dynamics. I was very well aware of, for example, code switching, but I knew that, for example, I could talk like a black person in my neighborhood and then I could go to school and talk like a white person. I didn't know that was called code switching. I know the name for it. I just knew that that was something I could do. I knew that if I talked like a black person, it would make my white brother mad. And I did it purposefully. I was code switching, but I didn't know that was what it was called. There was just back then, because I'm old, y'all. Back then, there was no internet. There was no, we didn't have phones in our pockets. Like, oh, let me Google code switching, and even then, I wouldn't have known what to Google. But, um, yeah, just information wasn't as widely disseminated. And if you're growing up in a white household as a black kid with a black racial identity, unless your parents are very intentional about teaching you about intersectionality, then no, you're not going to know these kind of things. So anyway, all that to say, I had an awareness of a lot of things that weren't in my childhood, that weren't validated until I was older and started hearing from black folks. So anyway, in this clip, so Consciously takes that clip and then he starts talking about um, how people got mad at him because he duetted another clip. Let me see if I can say this clearly, from an Asian chick. This is the one I was talking about earlier. And the Asian chick said, have y'all ever noticed how white women and black men um, can cause similar issues, and act and behave in similar ways? And he co signed that video. And he said a lot of black dudes got mad at him. And he was like, what don't y'all understand about intersectionality? Like, if you go to the library and you look at a whole bunch of books about these issues, intersectionality is basically when, um, for example, white women can use their whiteness and femininity to weaponize against black women, and black men can use their maleness and male power to weaponize against black women. And so the position that black women have to be in and are in, and it's true for me too, is having to know as a woman the issues that men create, and all the harm that men create. For those of you who are women on here, it's true. Like, we have to learn and know about how men think and operate and what to do and what not to do to keep ourselves safe, sane, and alive, because men are a big threat to our safety and aliveness. I think I've mentioned this before. Men are like number 11. I think number 11 on the dangers to women, on how women get killed. Men are number 11, you know, like, whereas if you reverse it in terms of men, in terms of how often women kill men, I don't think we're even on a list of the top 100. I mean, I don't know. I'm taking a guess, but it's not the same. We all know that men are the most violent gender because it's your anger is the only emotion that y'all are allowed to express without scrutiny. I understand that that is not fair, but it's how it is. So anyway, so what Lee was saying was, um, as a woman, women as the oppressed gender are always going to know way more about men. And then he was also saying that as black people are always going to know more about who oppresses us. In America, the oppressor is white people, white supremacy and patriarchy and the combination of it. So intersectionality is, if you're going to be an intersection, if a white woman is going to be an intersectional feminist, she has to figure out and has to learn how both her gender and her racial and ethnic identity are contributing to harm against black women. Anyway, my whole point is I was listening to this morning. This is a 1 minute clip that I'm talking about to y'all, a literal 1 minute clip. But I'm listening to this morning, and I'm like, man, if and I've been saying this for years, and I know a lot of black women have been saying this for years. If people listened to black women more often, if people listened to black women in like the 50s and 60s, and I'm not talking about black people. I'm talking about everybody. Like the stuff that black women have been trying to put everybody on game for years about the impending dangers, the things that are coming up. Like black women, we have our finger on the pulse of what's dangerous, who's dangerous, how they're dangerous. And I feel like when people say that black women told you, I think there's like a hashtag or black women been trying to tell you. It's not just since Twitter. It's not just since, it's not just, since 2010. It's like since the six before that. Probably literally as soon as black folks got free. Black women have been trying to tell y'all who's dangerous, what's the most dangerous. It boggles my mind that, yeah, that we're not listened to. But then in the last, I don't even know how many years since trans people have been trying to, I mean, I'm saying trans, but like trans, since the LGBTQIA community has been trying to gain more freedoms, it becomes very glaringly obvious that the more oppressed you get. So if you talk about like, so let's just say men are all up here, and so then women, white women are still going to be a higher, less oppressed group than black women, right? But then you go down further when you talk about trans women. Then you go down further when you talk about disabled women. But if you're talking about someone who's black, trans, and disabled, that is the person we should be listening to. And for some reason, our society is like, that is the most least valuable person. Also, that person, by the way, the person at the bottom of the barrel, black, trans, queer, disabled, the more oppression you take on, that person is the most vulnerable. And actually, also, the person who is being, that demographic is the person who is in the most danger and who is being killed the most often. I mean, I think if you don't know, you should know that trans kids are murdered and killed way more often or commit suicide way more often than every other demographic. Do you think that if we stopped and listened to trans kids, black, white, whoever, black, white, pink, purple, or polka dot, if we stop and listen to trans kids, what they think, that the world would be a safer place? Like, it just feels like, I don't get how people don't get this. And it's, I mean, even with the kids, like kids are an oppressed group too, just because they have no power. But like the kids nowadays are the ones who are at the Capitol trying to ban guns because they know they're the ones getting killed in schools. It's not the adults that are getting. I mean, yes, shootings are happening everywhere in America, but more shootings are happening in schools, not in corporate America. How many high level executives are victims of mass shootings in their office? It's the kids being killed. Oh, this foundation, I really got to change it. It really does not match my skin tone, but I got to keep going. I got to buy some more later. But anyway, so yeah, I think that it just needs to be said again and again. Listen to black women. Follow black women on Twitter. Follow disabled black women. Follow trans women. Follow trans black women. Read black women's books. Listen to black women's books. Follow black women's YouTube. listen to Black women's podcasts. Like, do the opposite of what society says. Society does not value the opinions and the words of Black women, especially because of they're trying to, especially the media, especially the racist media, especially conservative media, especially yeah, any chart of media, anytime any type of establishment that's trying to keep power is going to paint Black women as crazy or not worth listening to, or she's angry or whatever, and then they're gonna hold up people like, what's that heifer's name? Candace Owens, because she's essentially a house nigga, and she's, I mean, I use that phrase almost never, by the way. Sparingly, almost never. I think she might be one of 3 people I've ever said that about in my whole life. But she is. She is. She is literally the definition of what that phrase means. She has sold her soul to the devil. So yeah, that's when Black women don't listen to her. But she's an exception. She's literally sided with the oppressor. But even that is interesting, because I have heard people say that even when Black folks do that, especially Black women, that there is an element of that there's still an element of oppression in that in order to survive, she feels like she got to side with the oppressor. You know what? I'm not even gonna talk about Candace Owens. That woman drives me absolutely batshit crazy. But anyway, I just really appreciated what Lee was saying. I really appreciated his overall thoughts on intersectionality, and especially white women. And if you're a white woman watching this, just know you cannot, you can try to be a feminist, you can say you're a feminist, but you cannot be a feminist, or at least an intersectional feminist, unless you are at all times considering how you're weaponizing your gender against people who are in further oppressed groups further down. And that is one thing I see and have seen, because I've mentioned before in here that I've been involved in a lot of evangelical Christian spaces over the course of my life, my whole life. And I'm really only now really diverging and divesting from evangelical Christianity and just the toxicness of it. But white women in those spaces and out of those spaces, it's one thing if you're just a white woman and you're like, I'm a feminist, but you haven't really considered intersectionality. It's another thing to be in evangelical Christian spaces and be a white woman who's just has literally no idea of the kind of harm. Yeah, I can't get on that. being raised by a white woman with white sisters, white family members is just it's triggering. This is partly why I don't talk about race stuff more, because it makes me way too angry. I hate. This is kind of a rant now, but I hate how honestly narcissistic America is, because America will literally make Black people feel like we're crazy for the oppression that we're experiencing, in any response to it, whatever comes out as, oh, she's an angry Black woman or whatever, in terms of womanhood, or she's this or whatever, not knowing that, that MLK quote, a riot, what does he say? A riot is the language of the oppressed. I think that's the quote. Somebody look it up and tell me if I'm wrong. I think he says a riot is the language of the oppressed. But he's basically saying, this, because he said that back in the 60s. When the oppressed starts rioting, they will make it seem like y'all are violent, y'all are terrible. And it's like, we're literally rioting against hundreds of years of violence, hundreds of years of rape, hundreds of years of chattel slavery, and now how it's being played out now while we are free people. But I think Black women feel like that too. Like, the minute you start speaking up about something, the minute you start being strong, the minute you start having your own voice, the minute you start doing anything, it's taken as a riot. That's where that angry Black woman come from. I think, to silence Black women. So while I don't want to be silenced, I also don't want to be stressed. So I don't talk much about race, because I just found that, boy, the minute you start talking about race, people, especially if you educate, especially if you got something to say, people will come out the woodworks to just demonize you. Hell, I might get demonized over this little 20-minute unplanned rant here about intersectionality. And y'all, I'm not in the mood. Because here's what I've learned. This is what I've realized and why I stopped talking about race actively. Because I was on my whole thing, especially after Tamir Rice, I was really in the activist spaces. But I realized white people got information. If white people want to change, they are going to. I don't think black people are going to convince white people anymore. Like, y'all got the internet, y'all got Google, y'all got history books. Like, you can continue to live in the dark and be Trump supporting assholes if you want to. But there's enough information out there now. If you listen to 5 black women even a year, it'd be pretty obvious. Like, damn, y'all are still going through the same way y'all was going through before. It's just legalized. It's just legalized. It's just legalized. It's the same shit. It's the same shit. It's legalized, and they want us to be okay with it because now there's black millionaires and people like Candace Owens selling their soul to the devil, and Kanye. I said what I said. It's true. And there's some of us out there, we don't want to be okay with it, but I just know I'm not going to change white folks' mind. And I'm honestly too traumatized to keep trying. I think once I realized I couldn't change the mind of my own family members who are related to me, white people in my life, we share the same mother, and I couldn't convince them that black people are experiencing significant harm still. I was like, man, fuck this. Fuck y'all. Why even try? Why even try? So yeah, I have white people in my life. I don't keep white racist people in my life at all. But I don't try to convince white people anymore. So yeah, I don't talk about race. This is kind of an anomaly for me on my channel, and I probably won't talk about race anymore. But I do think it's worth stating, like, we do need to listen to black women. And this is my challenge. If you don't read black women, if you're not listening to black women podcasts, if you're not following black women on YouTube, if you're not consuming a diet that ingests that not just neutralizes, but like elevates the opinion and thoughts and perspectives of black women, you are not an intersectional feminist. You can say you are, but you're not. You're not a feminist. And if you're a man, you ain't shit. If you're a man, especially a black man, and you don't listen to black women or read black women or hear black women or know what black women are saying or follow black women on Twitter, you ain't shit. But I think black men who don't do the art, they already know that. I think they already know that. So I don't feel like I need to belabor that, but I think that the world sometimes is not ready to hear how harmful it's been. It's not ready to hear how it impacts everything, right down to the earth. How white supremacist male heteronormative patriarchy is killing the earth. Killing everything, killing everyone. Yeah. Nobody's ready to hear it. And I think that's partly why people don't listen to black women. But those are just my 2 cents. Let me see. I can't see comments because I did something wrong at the beginning. So if y'all are saying anything whatsoever, I can't see it. Chat viewing options? Can I? I don't know, y'all. I don't know. Anyway, I did not wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Just consciously. Sometimes he just gets me. I love him. I love him. If you're not following him, you should follow him. You should follow him. I love his stuff. I love that he's so direct. I love that he's an ally. He's such an ally for the LGBTQIA community and the drag community, which I'm not a part of. I am not. I'm straight as an arrow, unfortunately for me. Very unfortunately. That's how I know that people are born the way they are born, because I was born straight and straight and attracted to black men only. So yeah, but I am an ally. I am an ally, and I feel like everyone should be. If you see the alarming rates that black trans, not just black trans kid in general, but especially black people, black trans women are being murdered and killed and harassed and stalked. Like, it's, Google it if you don't know. It's astronomical. It's astronomical. I mean, I don't even think that's an L. I think that's a humanity thing. Like, that's a vulnerable population that is being murdered in really violent, awful ways. Y'all, just, it's terrible. Anyway, so yeah, if you're not following consciously, you should follow his account. Who are some other activists? Feel free to put them in the comments if you follow any other activists on social media. That's really, you know who else I love, who you should follow. Here's a Black woman you should follow. Oh my God, I can't believe I can't remember her name right now. No, it's Sonia Renee Taylor. She wrote a book called, hold on, give me a second. What's that book called? I Am Not My Body. It's gonna come to me. Somebody write it if you find it. The Body is Not an Apology. I knew I was gonna remember it. That is such a good book. Again, if you want to learn from someone who is in the oppressed group, she considers herself to be fat and disabled. And it's a beautiful, beautiful book. I literally think if everyone in the world read that book, the world would be a better place. Oh, yeah. Anyway, I think, you know what this is making me think, and I always say this, and I will, any book I've talked about or any account that I've talked about or anything, I will link in the description after I save this video, after it goes live, like after I'm done with it, after I do the thumbnail and stuff, I always put a description box, and I always put the links or any books that I mentioned in there. So I will put her book in there. Please, please, please read that book, y'all. If you want to learn something, read that book. I still don't know how to see comments. I really wish I hadn't. I tried to add a guest, and so now it's like waiting for guests. Anyone want to join me on here? I don't even know how to add you if you did, but I don't know if you can request. I don't know. Yeah, the Consciously, he was a he was a debater or something like that, and so he he took that to social media. He doesn't like debate live, but he does talk like quite a bit about CRT and stuff like that. I thought somebody was requesting that YouTube is just trying, or my phone is just trying to tell me my battery is dying. How the hell is my battery dying at 11:30 in the morning? That's when I know I've been on my phone too much and not doing enough studying. So yeah, I'm in a master's program right now. Yeah, I already missed my first homework assignment of the semester. I feel so trifling for that. So trifling. So trifling. And then I just went and put on a whole lot of makeup. Look at that. I got to get some new tools because I feel like my makeup is not looking the way I want lately. I didn't mean to put this much makeup on. This is what happens when I'm angry makeuping. Talking about racism and gender oppression and heteronormative patriarchal white supremacist oppression. And I just put too much makeup on. That's why I don't talk about race no more. And for those of you who don't know, I spent the first 16 years, almost 16 years of my career talking about race, teaching white kids about racism. I worked in a university. I worked on colleges and universities for the first, 4 years as a student. I was involved, but 13 years I worked on colleges and universities all across the Midwest and arguably the country. But Michigan, Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, teaching white kids about racism, teaching black kids about, when I say kids, I mean college students, but they felt like kids. You know what I'm saying? And at some point, when you're in a predominantly white institution, teaching white kids about something that they have not learned or should have learned, I really can't really describe how frustrating a feeling that is. Like, the kind of things like I'll never forget one of my most when I realized I was very close, I was like, I'm so close to being done with this. Is I was walking with this group of college students. We were at a training in Wisconsin, and these kids were from Whitewater, Wisconsin, y'all. They were from the University of Wisconsin at Whitewater, Wisconsin. So white, okay? And I remember this little girl, no, she was a college student, probably a freshman. And she said, Grace, is it okay for me to say, she said it too. I was like, why? Why would you say that? Why wouldn't you say, is it okay for me to say the N word? She like said the word in a question, is it okay for me to say? Like, first of all, little, you know damn well in the year 2000, whatever it was, that you are not allowed to say the N word. But then to look a black person in their eyeballs and ask them if it's okay to say the N word and say the N word with the hard R, like, she said it, y'all. I was like, I can't do this no more. I can't do this. I can't do this no more. I can see if it was coming from like a neutral place with like white kids whose parents was, relatively woke, who taught these kids some level decorum. But like when you talking to a 17-year-old or 18-year-old white kid with no level of education whatsoever, not CRT, not CRT, but like not anything. And they're interacting with black people for the first some of them for the first time in their life. It takes a special black person to be an educator under that condition. It takes a special, special black person. And I am not that special. I'm not that special. So that's when I was very close to being done with it. And then all the Tamir Rice stuff happened, and I started getting on my activist kick and started talking about it more and posting about it more. And I started losing friends and family members, which is fine because fuck them. Fuck anybody who's not an ally. Fuck anybody who denies racism. Fuck anybody who's not trying to be an active ally of black folks, knowing we live in one of the most racialized, racially discriminatory, violent places for black people while being in denial. I don't care that I lost them. I just realized this is actually costing me my mental health. And I would like to live. I would like to live. So yeah, I stopped talking about it. I do, however, talk about it a little bit in my book. My book, which is available on Amazon, it's always linked in all my description boxes, called Grace. Actually, not a lot. And I one day would like to publish a memoir, and I will talk about racism and finally say all the things I've been wanting to say. But until then, stay quiet. All right, y'all. Time to do something with this. Don't I look like right now Al Sharpton? I don't know what I would do. I think this is a let's abruptly switch topics to hair. This is I think now a week old, like literally 7-day old wash and go. Yeah, it is because I think it was last Monday when I washed it. Yep. So I don't want to wash it because I don't want to mess up my makeup. So I think I'm just gonna try to curl refresh, maybe throw it back in a pony, and get on with my life. Maybe I could just put some water, put some gel, slick it down, do like that. I'm good. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Y'all, thank you for coming to this very meandering conversation about race and oppression. But if you take anything away, listen to black women, y'all. Listen to black women. We are wise. We are beautiful. We are kind. Black women are lovely. And we are not the stereotypes and the tropes that the media has assigned to us. And you would know that if you were listening and reading Black Women, and you would understand how wonderful it is when a person has endured mountains and years and decades of oppression, and what can come out of that is very, very beautiful. So please, please listen to Black women, read Black women, love us, pay us reparations.